Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for our recurring webinar series. We hold these presentations twice a month. We cover a number of CAD and PLM specific topics. We want these to be informative tutorials as much as possible. Some housekeeping items. Everyone that is attending is muted. If you have questions, and we do like questions, please make sure you submit them through the Q&A portal. This little tab in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Be able to submit any questions that you have. This recording, a recording of this presentation will be up on our YouTube channel within 24 hours. And if you want a sneak peek of future topics to get it out ahead of things, you can look up our website, ETRAGE.com, under the events tab. I think we have 5 more webinars already up and being advertised for people to register. And if you have suggestions for future topics, please submit them. We love having ideas from the customer base. So today's agenda, I will cover a few introduction slides, and then I'll pass things over to Shei Shenbore, and he will cover details about our product, the ETRAGE viewer, along with the live demonstration, and we'll wrap up with Shei and I covering some FAQs. Myself, Scott Rich, I am our Director of Sales here at ETRAGE. I've been in the industry for nearly 10 years, and I specialize in helping customers automate processes with their PLM system and bridge gaps where they have not gotten all the stakeholders fully integrated into the system. Shei has more than 12 years experience, heavy experience in the CAD and simulation side, and branching out more and more to the PLM space in the last 3 years. So who is ETRAGE? We've been around for more than 20 years. We are a global adoption company when it comes to PLM. We help make sure every stakeholder across the company has bought in and is able to easily adopt and help all their team members easily adopt the PLM system. A little bit about our products. We have a number of out-of-the-box options. These are catered to Windchill primarily, and then we have a number of services that are involved around Windchill and other related PTC products. We are a PTC technology partner, and that's why we're able to offer the suite of products that make Windchill effective and easily adopted across your enterprise. A little bit about some of our customers. They tend to be any kind of size, small, medium, or large enterprises, but they tend to be designers and manufacturers. They're companies that need to share data, often share complex data, need to find a way to automate how that data is going to be shared. It needs to be absolutely accurate with revision control across every division for all stakeholders. And we excel at integrating systems. When you have legacy systems or multiple tools that need to be involved in your complete digital thread, we excel at bridging the gaps between them. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Shei. He'll share his screen and take over with today's live demonstration.
So I'll go into first off talking about the current state of most engineering companies and the data silos that exist and how we help bridge that gap with the ETRAGE viewer. Right. Now, first thing we'll talk about is we're starting off, as you can see here, engineering usually, in our particular audience, usually uses some PLM system, right? We'll call it Windchill, for example, right? And as I think we covered this as well in our prior webinar last week on the ETRAGE publisher, right? But the goal is you have other departments in the organization, right? So you have manufacturing, you have quality, purchasing, marketing, or even others that are not pictured on here, right? That need access to the data from engineering, right? But oftentimes it's difficult to, number one, so oftentimes they do not have access to the PLM system, right? But in cases where they do have access, right, the PLM system built for engineers can be very unwieldy to a non-engineer, right? And so then it makes adoption very, very difficult, right, for the non-engineering, user base, right? You could also have suppliers or vendors, right, that are not integrated within your company, right? They're external to your company, right? They don't use all the tools that your company uses, right? But they still may need some data from your company in order to provide quotes and things like that, right? For tooling and whatnot, right? Again, all of those, right? Different stakeholders need access to the data from engineering, but there's oftentimes silos in how that data gets transferred across, right? Oftentimes you have emails back and forth from one person to another, or you have the data sitting on network drives or shared drives, which presents an additional challenge in and of itself, right? In order to manage the data, make sure it's up to date, it's revision, it's rev controlled, you're making sure that any data on there is the most up-to-date current data, and it's not outdated, right? And there's no change from engineering that now makes it obsolete, right? Or making sure that it's easily searchable and you're not having to search through a sea of a million different PDFs in a network drive just to find a single one that you need to send to a supplier, right? And so that's why we created the ETRAGE publisher, right? And again, like I mentioned, you could see this on our prior webinar. It should be on our YouTube page. But again, the ETRAGE publisher, right, is an external application that sits on top of your PLM system of Windchill and sucks data out of Windchill, right, and publishes them to many different repositories for access, right? One of those repositories it publishes them to is the ETRAGE viewer, right, which is the subject of today's webinar, right? Now, the ETRAGE viewer is a very easy to use, very lightweight viewer, right? That now you can allow all different stakeholders, in this case, manufacturing, right, to access and pull data from. Purchasing can also use it as well, right? You can also have quality log into the ETRAGE viewer, and if they need, drawings and models for their, inspection reports, they can pull that off of there as well. You can even have marketing just go in there if they just need, for example, a model, maybe a native CAD file or a step file if they want to create a product rendering, right, before the product is released, right, and manufactured. They can just go in there and start pulling that data without having to email, engineering or designers back and forth to say, hey, can you please send me the latest model to create a product rendering off of, right? And then it becomes an email chain back and forth, having to send data over, and at that point, once it's emailed over, that file in the email could be out of date in a week or a day or two, right? But then marketing could still be working off of that old or obsolete or out of date information, right? You could also then have suppliers or vendors also connect to the ETRAGE viewer and pull out whatever data they need as well, right? But again, the ETRAGE viewer is the way it's created. It's a role-based application, right? And so people only see data for their context and their role and what they need, right? And so again, you can configure the ETRAGE viewer to ensure that your suppliers or vendors don't need to see all your guts. They don't need to see all of your native files. They don't need to see all of your anything you do not want them to see, right? If you just know, hey, I want to get a quote for tooling for this one specific part, I can take a drawing from my PLM system, push it out to the ETRAGE viewer, and a supplier can log in and see that latest drawing, right? But they don't get to see anything else, right? All of that can be made possible with the viewer, right? Now, in addition, we do have some customers where, again, it's a very, very small handful of them. Most customers prefer to, take the viewer and the publisher together as a package deal, where the publisher publishes the information out of Windchill and then the viewer distributes it and makes it usable and accessible throughout the organization, right? We have a very small handful of customers who, have homegrown scripts and tools, over the years that have kind of helped them, pull out data from Windchill successfully, right? And so they feel like their Achilles heel is not so much in the proliferation of data out of Windchill, right? So they have scripts to do that, but they say when they do that, that data still lives on, a network drive or a shared drive somewhere, right? And again, even in a best case scenario, you could take a lot of time, right, several minutes, if not hours, to search or sift through a particular network drive or shared drive just to find a particular drawing that you're looking for, right? And then there's no revision control at that point, right? So if there's a newer model that gets released and there's a newer drawing that comes out, the network drive is not smart enough to know that the old one has to be deleted, right, or removed, right? So there are issues with that, right? And so that's why we have some of those customers that come to us come just for the ETRAGE viewer itself, right? And in that sense, we have a very small preprocessor, right, that we can install with, on top of the network drive, and that preprocessor will suck in data from the network drive, clean it up, and load it into the ETRAGE viewer database. So that way, again, non-PLM users can still access and view the data within the viewer, and now they get all the benefits of this being a role-based, database-driven solution, whereby all the non-PLM users have access to the data they need when they need it, and it's the exact format they need, and they don't need more than that, and they don't get visibility into anything else that's more privileged than what they should need access to. And so, all that being said, I'll pause here and jump into a live demonstration of the ETRAGE viewer. All right. So to go ahead and start, I'm going to start with the viewer over here. Now, what I have is, so this is the login page, right, when you start, and I'm going to log in first off as I have different roles set up, right? And so first I'll log in this case as Quincy Quality, right? So again, within my organization, I'm Quincy in the quality department, and let's log in this case and be able to see what information I have in here, right? So you'll notice when I log in, first off, it's a very simple, very easy to use interface, right? I just have a search bar, right, and some search results down below, right? And in this case, it's listing for me here or showing me the most recently published data, and this is a configurable setting where we could say, hey, any data that's been published within the last 2, 3, 4, 5, or however many days, you can show that just so that way people can easily see that and you can go grab it from here. But again, I can always go into search and I can easily search for anything I want, right? So say I want to go ahead and search for, if something starts with the word, right, I can search for that and it'll find that for me right away, right? Or if I don't know what it starts with, I can use a wildcard character, right? Oops, it should be a star. Let's do that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so wildcard character, and that will find me everything with 1020 in the name, example, right? Also, take a look over here at any recent searches, right, that I've done in the past. I can just pick that and run with it, right? Or I can also create a search, right, based off of any advanced searching criteria. So again, not only can I search just by name or number, I can also search within specific contexts, right? So if we have multiple products or contexts in PLM, I can filter by that. I can also filter by any file formats that I want to see, or in this case, if there are multiple lifecycle states, I can also filter by that as well. Right? Now, most of our customers, almost all of them, prefer to only load released data into the ETRAGE viewer, just so that way, non-engineering users understand that anything they see in ETRAGE viewer is released data and that's it, right? And in that case, then it's easily configurable to only load and only publish and only show released data within the ETRAGE viewer, right? But again, I can set any of these search parameters in here, and I can also save that as a saved search, so that way I can just easily retrieve that saved search in the future, right? So again, if this is a search query that I use often, right, maybe weekly, for example, right, it's very easy to go save that as a saved search, and weekly you can just log in, click on Save Search and just run with that and see the listed results. Now, in this particular example here, I'm interested in the light pole assembly, right? So I want to check that against, check the drawing of that against a part that, an assembly that's been manufactured off the line, right? So I need the drawing of that assembly, and I also would like the step file to load into my CMM software so I can retrieve the nominals from the step file, and then that makes my checking, my inspection, light years faster, all right, and easier, right? So to do that, I can just go in here and just say, okay, if it's a light pole, I don't know if it starts in the middle or the end, so I'll just do a wildcard character and just light, and it should come out with, okay, so a few items, but I have the two I need over here, right? So a light pole assembly and light pole drawing. Very easy for me to just, on the download button over here, I can pick which one I want, whether the PVZ file, which is a very lightweight CreaView CreaView file, or I can pick the step file. Again, the type of file that we allow for download, right, is fully customizable. Again, this is more from the publisher side, so we can publish native Creo files, we can publish step, IGES. The list is endless, and really you should take a look at our ETRAGE publisher webinar for a more exhaustive list of what files can be published, right? But again, if it exists in Creo and can be saved out of Creo, odds are we can publish that with the publisher, and we can make that available here in the viewer, right? And for the drawing in this case, I can take a look and say, okay, I want to grab the PDF of that, right? And I want to see, okay, what that PDF looks like, right? Easily click on that and it loads that up immediately. You'll also notice over here that the drawing can also be watermarked, right? In this case with, current date and time, right? And also life cycle state as well, right? And this watermark is fully customizable to, any particular organization, right? So almost no two customers have the same exact watermark, right? And so you can talk with us and we can configure that, as you desire to show what you need to watermark on your particular drawings. In this case, I'll head back over here. I can multi-select, again, multiple of these search queries, and I can right-click and hit download, and it'll download both of those in a zip file for me that I could easily use. Okay, so now let's also say I'm done with, as a quality role, right? Again, I can just get the data I need and go use it, right? I'll log out of here and I'll go switch to a different profile. In this case, I'm going to be, Penny from purchasing, right? Go and log in this case, and see. All right. Now, in this particular case, you'll notice from purchasing, I have a much smaller list of files, right? Again, that's because the ETRAGE viewer is fully customizable when it comes to what data any particular user gets to see, depending on their role, right? Now, in this particular case, I just, from purchasing, all I care about is drawings, right? I just need to see the latest released drawing, right? In this case, I'm looking for the drawing of the full, top level assembly and also the base casting, right? I can see both of those. I can right click and I can download them immediately and go take action on them and use them. Again, I can easily go and do a search, find any particular piece of data I need right in the system, and I can see, okay, is it a drawing? Yes. Is this the latest? Yes, it's always going to be the latest released information, right, inside of the ETRAGE viewer, and I can just go ahead and just easily download that. Now you'll notice there's this internal use only attribute. This is an attribute that is created within Windchill, right, from engineering, right, and this particular example here, it's set to no, right? For many of the other parts, you'll notice, if you noticed in the quality view there, they were set to yes, right, for internal use only, but in this case, it's set to no, And I'll get back to this particular attribute later on to show you how you can help segregate data, with suppliers. Right? But again, at this point, if I'm someone in purchasing, I can just go in here, find the file I need, and I can just go ahead and download that and start to use that immediately. Right? Okay. So in this case, I'll pick on this over here, and I could take a look at this drawing, this PDF of the drawing, and see in this case there's probably about 10 or 12 fins around this this part over here, right? This casting, right? Now let's say, for example, there's a ECN, right, that comes out, and you want to change the number of fins, in this case from 12, because they realize it's overkill, and you really just need 4 fins, right, to structurally hold this light pole in place, right? And so now we'll have engineering go make a design change to this, right? Now normally we'll go through your ECN process where you go ahead and revise the part and then make the change from there, right? But in this case, for purposes of the webinar and just for time in this case, I'll go ahead and do a set state on these parts, right? Now in this particular case here in this window, I'm in Windchill, I'm the org admin, right? So again, I'm just going to do a very quick set state, right? Just for time purposes in this case for the webinar. So pick that part and set it back to in work. All right. And so now I'll pull back Creo, right? And inside of Creo, I'm logged in as a designer, right? So Danny Designer is the user. And Danny is going to go in here. Let's synchronize my workspace, and I'll see that some items are now set to in work. I can now go in here and let's see, I will check out the base casting, but I'll actually start with opening up the drawing in first in Creo. I can see, okay, there's 12 fins over here. I need to make them 4, right? And I'll go ahead to open the part. Number of ribs. Okay, let's make that 4. Regenerate. Okay, so as I can see here, there's 4 fins now, right? Or 4 ribs. All right. Again, I can take a look at the drawing and see that reflects appropriately as 4 ribs, right? I can also then close out of here, go back to my workspace, and check in casting. Now again, I'll switch back, as an admin. In this case, typically you would go through your lifecycle process to get this back to release. But again, just for the sake of time on this webinar, go ahead and grab these guys and do a set state again, back to released. Okay. All right, so they're released, right? Now, in this particular setup we have over here, what we have behind the scenes, I'll pull this out just so that way you can see it as an example, right? What we have is a separate server where we have the ETRAGE publisher loaded onto it, right? And the publisher is configured to monitor Windchill, and periodically, if you see any change data, any newly released data, let's go ahead and pull that data and start to process it and publish it out, right? So that's what's going on here. You'll notice right here, noticed, okay, something has changed. New data has come in, and so now I'm starting up Creo in background mode, and I'm going to start publishing that data. So I'll leave this to publish for a little bit here, and I'll come back to that. And meanwhile, I will go take a look at the ETRAGE viewer, right? In this case, I'm logged in as an admin, right? So if I go over here in the top right corner, you'll notice I'm logged in as a system administrator, right? And I'm logged in here just so I can show you a couple of different things, right, about the viewer. So I'll jump in here and show how, number one, you can set this up with any particular attributes that you want to pull from Windchill and have them be visible within the ETRAGE viewer, right? We can also set up any particular contexts or life cycles, right, that you also want to be visible within the ETRAGE viewer, right? You can also connect to your LDAP server, right? Or if you can use SSO, or we can connect with OpenSSO, right? And map your Active Directory, right? So just so that way we ensure that if you have existing users and user groups, that you already have created, right, we can pull that data straight into ETRAGE viewer. Otherwise, we can set them up manually in here, right? In this case, have users manually set up, right, and groups of users, right, and each of the user groups you can have different permissions for them, right? Take a look at the permissions level, right? You can, if I notice, for example, over here, the suppliers, for example, you can set permissions by, for example, what contexts in Windchill they should be able to see, right? What lifecycle states, right? Or I guess what context from of Windchill data they should be able to see. What lifecycle states, what formats they should be able to see, right? And then also, you can also filter by security label as well, right? So I think, like I mentioned earlier, there's a security label attribute in Windchill called, internal use only, right? And in this case, for the supplier permissions, it's set to no. So yes, suppliers can see any Windchill documents with internal use only set to no, right? But if internal use only by default is set to yes, then they cannot see that data. So again, you can use this to segment your information, right? Or sometimes it may just not be suppliers. It could be, maybe you have some data that's segmented by region. So, maybe you have users in China that need to see some data, and users in India that need to see a separate set of data, right? Again, we could, segment those accordingly, with security labels and things like that. Right? So again, that's just showing, the admin side of the viewer. Now we'll go back. The data should be finished publishing already, right? And so now we'll go back to purchasing role again. And in this case, yeah, so last with Penny purchasing, I had this PDF drawing up on my computer, right? Now if I go ahead and I refresh this, oh, there's a whole bunch of gibberish that shows up on my screen. Which, this is not an accident, by the way. This is intentional, right? This is the beauty of having a database system, right, run your non-PLM users, data, right? All of this is saying is, hey, that drawing you were looking at, Penny, has changed. There's a newly released version that's been published, and so you cannot see the old one anymore, right? So now I have to go back out of there, right? Do my search again, right? And then pick, again, the same one. And now it shows me, in this case, the newly released version, which is 4 fins. Imagine I was using a network drive, right? And the version of the drawing I had from, I don't know, 5 minutes ago, the 12 fins was still on the network drive, right? How would I know which one of those to pick or use, right? It's very easy to just go in there and grab, oh, I was looking at this, 5 minutes ago. It couldn't have changed in 5 minutes, right? I could have picked that if I had a network drive and sent that out, right? Not knowing that I just am using outdated information at that point, right? But again, the beauty of being able to use our ETRAGE solutions, right, to take any non-PLM data, right, have it be searchable and actionable to a non-PLM user where they have the most up-to-date released information is, frankly, invaluable. Right. And then finally, I'll say I want to log in as a supplier, right? So let's log out of here, and we'll go log in as Sally the supplier. And again, in this case, as Sally the supplier, the only piece of information I can see, right, is the base casting. And that's simply because there is the internal use only set to no attribute in here, right? And if you want to confirm that, I can say, okay, well, let's do a wildcard character and hit search. Let's see, give me everything in this environment, it only gives me this one item. So again, if the concern is your core company IP, you don't want suppliers to see your native CAD models or any other piece of information or the full assembly. If you don't want them to see that, right, all of that information can stay protected. But if all they need is a PDF of the latest drawing because the ECN says, okay, let's change it from 12 ribs down to 4 ribs, now they can go in here, pick on that, see the new drawing, and they can go get you a quote on this immediately. Again, that concludes the demonstration portion of things here. But again, that just shows you the power of the ETRAGE viewer to be able to take PLM data, right? But again, extend that to non-PLM users across the enterprise, just so that way now there's the one single source of truth you have for all of your PLM data to non-PLM users, again, is the ETRAGE viewer, right? You have the most up-to-date information at your fingertips, updated in real time as data from PLM changes, right? And you can just publish from, take from there and action on it immediately, right? In a very easy, clean, and simple to use environment. Now, ultimately, the question then becomes, well, why does this matter, right? So one of the things is, in this case, if I'll just take a quick case study example, right? So if we have purchasing, right? We have cases where, purchasing could have a list of, I don't know, 10 or 20 parts, right? Or bill of materials, right? For a particular assembly where they need to go source and pull out individual drawings from, right? And we have a particular, customer that we're talking to who mentioned that their purchasing department, a single BOM could easily have, I don't know, 500 parts in it, right? And they have to go into a network drive that has millions of PDFs, right? Now, in their case, it's segmented by folders to make it kind of look, quote unquote, easier to use, right? But the reality is you still have to go into it folder by folder by folder to go search for a single part one at a time, right? And then, if it's not in a certain folder, you go back out and then go pick another folder and go search into it, right? And this customer mentioned, he said their purchasing department sometimes spends easily upwards of 2 hours a day just searching for data in that network drive. That's a quarter of the workday just searching for data. And so now take that by how many people are in your purchasing team, take that by, again, extending this beyond just purchasing to other departments in the organization, and you can easily see how ETRAGE Viewer in and of itself is an incredible, value solution, right? To get the most up-to-date data very quickly, very easily, in a very clean and simple to use, UI. Right. Now, why does all this matter, right? Well, it's the fact that with automation of the ETRAGE viewer being able to pull the data and make it searchable, right? And also present only the most appropriate data for the particular user and their role and their context, right? That means you don't have to worry about data loss, right? Or a supplier, for example, reverse engineering your parts if they have access to the raw native CAD model, for example, right? There's less risk of worrying about working on outdated drawings or data, right? So you can accelerate your time to market, right? And you could increase your employee satisfaction. Again, you could have your employees go into the ETRAGE viewer and find parts in 5 or 10 minutes and not 2 hours, right? And so this again is the reason why the ETRAGE viewer is available. It's to serve that core user base of non-PLM users within the enterprise that need access to PLM data, but again, they don't need to spend 2 hours sifting through a network drive to find that. So at this point, we'll jump into some frequently asked questions. I'll pull Scott back on the line, and Scott, you can go ahead.
Yeah, we're actually getting some questions from our audience. Let's start
Fantastic.
there. Are there other CAD file types that can be published into the viewer? such as SolidWorks and AutoCAD?
Okay, great question. The answer to that is yes. Yes, there are others. So I think I'd mentioned, I'll just show this very quickly here. I mentioned in this particular environment here, we have the publisher, which is what's publishing those files out, right? And as you can see in just this one particular example here, yes, if you have SolidWorks files within your PLM system, right? AutoCAD, Inventor, schematics. There's also other CAD packages that are not currently shown in this view, right? Because again, we license the publisher for only the software modules that you use, right? But the answer to that is yes. Yeah, we can. If you have other CAD files that are managed by Windchill, we can take all that data out and and publish them.
Awesome. Thank you. Next, I think this is the answer is going to get back to our drawing notes search feature for the viewer. Can we search drawing with a drawing in the viewer with other metadata from the title block? For example, an ECN number.
Correct. Yes. Yes, you would be able to do that. Yes. Again, with our with our drawing note search feature, yes, we can do all that very easily. So it's essentially a matter of publishing that data, right, and making sure that when we publish that, we can customize. Okay, it should also publish and search for the notes and have those published to the ETRAGE viewer, and then you can search within the viewer based off of that information for, like, for example, the ECN number.
Very good. Next gets around to giving vendors access to drawings. Assuming you have several suppliers, how can you restrict access to specific drawings? I assume you have drawings A, B, and C. You would want a different supplier accessing each of those drawings just for themselves.
I see. So that's a great question, right? And that could be something that you could, again, access or restrict, whether it's by context, right, for example, or you could use security labels to kind of segment that information, right? And so we know that a particular drawing, if you're saying, as I'm understanding the question, if you're saying you only want supplier A to see drawing A, you only want supplier B to see drawing B, you only want supplier C to see drawing C, then you could set, for example, a security label of A, B, and C on each of those drawings, right? So that way, each particular supplier only sees what they need or what they should be seeing, I should say.
And next one, is it possible to pull cost data from ERP, such as Oracle? Suppose, to make that a more generic question, can we pull data from sources other than Windchill and feed them into the viewer?
That's a great question. And for that, I would say yes. The answer to that is a yes. Yes. We do have the ability to link and sync up with your ERP system, right? And be able to pull data out of there, right? And merge them together, and also then, serve them within the ETRAGE viewers that as well, right? More than likely, in order to do that, we will probably need the publisher as a combination with the viewer to do that. And the publisher is what we can set up to integrate with ERP, right? But again, all that is entirely possible. Yeah, with the ETRAGE solution of products.
On a similar vein, can you manually load drawings and other documents?
Manually load drawings and other documents. Yes, yeah, that's also a yes as well. And I'll just show a very quick example of that, because I know we're kind of running on time here. But essentially, the way you would do that is using the publisher, right? Again, this is set up to monitor Windchill, right? But we can also set it up such that if I go into the processing options here, we can set it up with a standalone mode, where instead of monitoring Windchill, right, I can set it up to either search within Windchill standalone and go search for particular files, whether it's particular models I have set up here, or I can have a list file with files already listed in there that it can search within Windchill for, right? Or it can go search within a directory, and this directory could be a directory on my network drive, for example, right? And it's processing right now, that's why it's grayed out, but it could go search within a directory in my network drive, for example, for any files in there, and then process those as well, right? So you could have, for example, ERP where there's the file that's generated from SAP every day that says, hey, there's a list of drawings that are needed or files need to be published, right? Now you can take that as an input into this from file over here and have it automatically publish that information, right? So all of that is definitely possible.
Excellent. Related topic. What other file types are there? Any file types that are restricted? A couple questions. Microsoft documents, are those supported? Are there what other file types are supported here?
Great question. Again, so not just Microsoft. So what other file types are supported essentially? So aside from the CAD documents, also I go under document export. You'll notice there's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Visio, AutoCAD files as well, right? And also entire Windchill products for archival, Windchill packages, and also ECNs as well, right? And so,
again, on this, how about 3D PDFs?
Or 3D PDFs as well. Again, if it's and 3D PDF is more likely to come from your CAD package from Creo, right? And where you could, and if it's from Creo as a 3D PDF, we can pull that into the viewer, and the publisher can pull that for you.
Good. It looks like we have 2 more questions, unless a few others come in at the last moment. Art says their shop floor has a lot of turnover. Does that administrator of the viewer need to remove a user every time they have that sort of turnover?
I see. Yeah, we understand. Yeah, turnover is inevitable as part of a company, and the answer to that would be no. Actually, the way we could, with that again, it's all configurable, right? But if we could sync to, for example, your LDAP server, right? Or if you're using single sign-on, right, we can do that as well. So essentially, if you have any users that leave your organization, right, as long as their profile is deactivated, right, we can see that right over here from the ETRAGE viewer, and they lose access to the viewer, right? And so you in that case you don't have a case where a user from your shop floor, leaves the organization, goes to go for work for a competitor, and can still kind of access your data and pull your data. That wouldn't happen, because in that case, as long as we're seeing them in Active Directory and they're deactivated within your IT systems, they'll be deactivated within ETRAGE viewer as well.
And then is the reverse true? If do you have to add a user every time a new hire is made?
Again, as long as they're added within your IT systems, right, within your Active Directory, and there's a profile set for them, again, that should automatically populate within the ETRAGE viewer as well, right? And so you shouldn't need to go set up a new user every single time, right? The only time that might be the case would be if you have any custom, if that particular user needs to have some custom permissions that are not already within the default permission list you already have set, right?
And the last question, is it possible to merge multiple drawings into a single document?
Oh, yes. Great question. Yeah, that's a resounding yes. And to do that, it's very simple. It's you can just go into here. There's this merge PDF button over here, right? And so, like I mentioned earlier, right, if you have like the example of someone from purchasing who has 500 parts to look for in a bill of materials document, right? All you need is to take that list and in the ETRAGE viewer over here, you can just hit the merge PDF and feed that list as a file into the ETRAGE viewer, right? And once you do that, ETRAGE viewer will search for that, pull all the PDFs together, concatenate them into one single PDF file. And so in that case, you would have 500, one single PDF with 500 individual pages, right? Each of them with its own, being a drawing of the individual, part in that case, right? So yes, it is completely possible to merge PDFs of multiple files, into one single one.
I think we should wrap it up there. I see no further questions, and we've already gone a little bit longer than normal. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, no other last thoughts. I guess maybe I'll if there's any answer to these frequently asked questions, I guess maybe the last one I'll talk about really quickly here. I'll just run through these FAQs. One, someone would be, can you watermark and does it stay on the document outside of Windchill? Yes, as you just saw that in the demonstration here. It stays on the PDF outside of Windchill, and it's not something that can be, somehow manipulated or removed, outside of that, right? Like you mentioned, we use multiple CAT tools and we can handle that. There's how much training is needed to configure the viewer. It's really, not that long as well, right? It's something that, I would say we can train admins within half a day to be able to configure the viewer and to monitor and be perfectly good as an admin on it. And this one I think is very important to cover really quickly here. Do you need a license for each user that accesses it? And the answer for that is no. And so the licensing for the ETRAGE viewer as well as the publisher is a site license, right? And so, and that's the reason why we at ETRAGE we care about about this is we don't care if you have 20 users, 200 users, or 2,000 users. Right? It's a single site license, right? So if you're a company of 200 users and you make an acquisition the next day and you double to 400, it's still the same cost to that, right? And so that way we want to enable you to push data to everyone without having licensing be an hindrance to that, right? So those are the other questions I'll just quickly address over here in the FAQs. I know we're short in time, so we'll go ahead and end it here. Thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, look forward to seeing you on a future webinar edition.
Thanks again, everyone.